Hello, I'm Michael Depp, editor of TVNewsCheck, and I'm with Eric Ludgood, the new head of Newsy, and we are talking TV. Talking TV is made possible by Making the Media, a podcast from Avid exploring the forces that shape the media, news, and entertainment business. The latest episode tackles the subjects of diversity and inclusion within the TV industry. Host Craig Wilson talks with Deborah Williams, Executive Director of the Creative Diversity Network in the UK. Making the Media is available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, and other podcast platforms. Hello, Eric. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you today?
Very well, thanks. I'm very happy to have you on. You are the new head of Newsy, which has had a major relaunch this week. It's got a new home in Atlanta, new facility, major shakeup of the staff and staff up, and a shakeup of the programming. And as of this week, it's also over the air in over 90% of US television homes. A lot of change for Newsy this week. So much change, it makes me wonder how much of pre-October Newsy even survives now?
A good bit of pre-October Newsy survives because our primetime programming, Newsy Tonight, In the Loop, those programs were always signature programs of what we were doing. And they remain the polish on the brand. There were some on the air team. Alex Livingston was doing Morning Rush, which was 1 hour. Alex Livingston, along with other anchors, now are doing a 4-hour version of Morning Rush. So there's a good bit of Newsy that remains, and the most important thing that remains is our commitment to doing fact-based news. And our expansion on that concept, and our desire to do as much original reporting as possible.
So for those who have been watching Newsy prior to this week, they won't be entirely discombobulated when they tune in, and they'll see some familiar faces. And
they will see familiar faces. They will see familiar storytelling. We've retained the reporters who were working in Washington, and added to that staff. We retained some of the folks who were working in Chicago. And so we're really ramping up and, if you will, doubling down on what Newsy is and what Newsy can be.
Nevertheless, this is a pretty major overhaul. So what's underpinning that?
Here's what the underpinning is: that, we believe that there's a large portion of this country that really wants fact-based journalism without the color of right or left, without the color of politics. That we want fact-based journalism that's right down the middle, and we believe that it is great to have it free. It's over the air. It's on OTT. You don't have to have a cable subscription to get it. You don't have to pay for it. And one of the underpinnings of our corporation as a whole is having a better informed electorate. And that's what we want to do. Make the information available to them, tell them great stories, give them great information, and allow them to make those decisions about how they want to vote and how they want to participate in our democracy on their own. And the underpinning of this is that we believe there's an opportunity here to actually get a new audience, an audience that's looking for something different. And we're hoping that difference is something very simplistic: good, hard-nosed journalism that does not have a taint one way or the other.
Now, Newsy's always skewed young. It's been targeted to millennials. But when I spoke with Kate O'Brien, who is the head of news groups for EW Scripps Networks prior to the relaunch, she said that target is widening. So how is the new programming sort of looking to pull in that wider audience?
Well, the target audience is widening because we are learning more and more about the over-the-air audience. And based on what we know right now, that audience skews a little bit older. But we're simply going to do what we do. We're going to tell stories about all of America. And if we're telling stories about all of America and in our minds telling their stories, that's how we're going to attract people. We're going to talk about real people. We're going to talk to real people. So we are really, that's how we're going to attract them. We're not doing anything out of the ordinary where we're going to do specials on this or that. America has great stories. And we have correspondents stationed all over the country, 14 different bureaus, and we're just going to tell real stories. And we believe that original reporting, those stories will attract people every day, day in and day out.
There is, though, an aesthetic. I mean, as I was watching it last night a bit, and there's certainly still kind of a younger vibe to it. Maybe a little bit more informality in the address for the anchors, if not informality, just sort of not the rigidity we're used to perhaps in other news networks. There was a visual style and a fluency that does have a kind of a youthful element to it too, and the production values itself. There's almost even a cinematic quality to some of the way that the features that the stories are shot. So it does still seem to have a little bit of a younger outfit on.
Well, what you see in our anchors is what we hope is going to be authenticity. They're real people, and we want them to be themselves. So if one is a little bit more formal than the other, or a little less formal than the other, that's okay. We want authenticity in the storytelling. We want authenticity in the presentation. And we believe there is space out there and for all kinds of storytelling, no matter how it's shot. And just because the anchor may be a little bit younger, a little bit less formal, doesn't mean it's going to turn off any part of the audience. It's like having a conversation. And you can have conversations with people across generations, across cultures. And that's what we're trying to generate here is that conversation that the audience can have. And build a relationship with our folks that way, because they're real folks.
Part of your remit is the editorial identity for the whole network. You've said the word authenticity a lot, which does have some abstraction to it, though. So when you're trying to translate that down into just say the aesthetic, the look, and the vibe of Newsy, what is that? What do you want it to look like? How do you want it to come across, and what's your intention there?
I really simply wanted to come across as normal, real people talking to normal, real people every day. Some days we're going to have stories that are a lot more serious and where there's devastation and those kinds of things. And we want people to be able to come to us and hear us tell that story normally, without the bombacity, without all of the things that we do in television to make that story feel bigger. We just want to tell the story. And then we want to take it the next step, and that's show the impact of that story and provide some context around that story, whatever that story might be. So that's what we want to do every day. And we try to do it with as many stories as possible. Go the extra mile, use the extra graphic, take the time to say, to ask an extra question. You might find our interviews might run a little bit longer than normal because we want to ask another question, and we want to drill down, and hopefully our folks are tapping into what we believe the audience wants to hear. And our folks are very, very smart, and they're asking those questions in ways that we can pull out some context so people can get a full understanding of an issue.
Well, on the subject of more stories, news production is expensive, which is why we see so much of cable news devolve into panels that are digesting every little nugget of information that comes along, rather than try to get more nuggets into the news. It's a lot cheaper than sending a crew out to cover a story or develop a story over a period of time. So Newsy has in the past resisted that panel approach. But now you're producing 17 hours, I believe, of news a day. Is it feasible to stay off the panels?
Yes, it is definitely feasible to stay off the panels, because that's why we have employed the journalists that we have, so we can go out and do the original reporting, to have as many bureaus as we have. We also have a wonderful partnership with the Scripps local stations where we use some of their content. We're building relationships with others so we can have the kind of content that we want to have. The panels, start to help create those silos and the back and forth. And when we have a guest on, we want to have a guest on for illumination. We want to have a guest on that's going to add something to the conversation, and not, two guests on who are going to be fighting each other. That's hard for the audience to digest. It's hard for the audience to get anything from that. We're trying to inform, and we also want to have a network that people enjoy watching, that's engaging. So that's where those stories come in, and we have the time to do that, and we have a commitment to do that kind of reporting, and that's where we're going to be. That's where we're going to stay. That's our lane. That's why we're here. We're going to resist it, and we're not going that route. We're going to stay on the route that we're on with our original reporting.
There was a big hire up around this reboot. How many people did you end up bringing on to Newsy?
Michael, you asked me a question that I can't tell you exactly the number, but it was more than 100.
Yeah.
So yes, there was. We hired a large portion of the staff because we were not doing as much live as we're doing right now.
Mhm.
We were not doing as many documentaries as we're doing right now. So we had to hire more staff. So, and the bulk of that staff is here in Atlanta, but some of the staff is in Chicago, some in DC as well.
Mm-hmm. So Newsy's gone from its Missouri roots. As you mentioned, you got a new home base in Atlanta. And it seems along with that, a big step up in production values with it. Tell me about the new facility and what it's enabling that Newsy couldn't do before.
Well, that's in terms of production values. If you look at Newsy Tonight and In the Loop, those shows have always had very, very high production values, and that will remain. The news shows that we're doing, the live news shows, that's where the facility in Atlanta is really allowing us to do the live programming that we do. The facility in Atlanta is also going to help bring in more people so we can have live guests on the set, and when we're beyond the COVID era, where we'll be bringing folks in. So it also allows us to have the kind of flexibility in production to do different kinds of things, different kinds of shows that look a little bit different. So that's the biggest asset that we have right now is how we're established here in this particular facility.
And you've also got bureaus all around the country, quite a few,
yes,
actually. Not to put you on the spot again, but how many of you bureaus do you know now? 14 in some pretty far-flung areas, and some areas you wouldn't think that perhaps would have bureaus necessarily. Look across the map. What comprises a bureau? What does that constitute? A couple of people?
It varies. Most of the time it's at least one person, and sometimes a couple of people. And these folks live in these areas. That's where they live. And we allow them, they have equipment and they can get to us, and they're get stories for us in those areas. Yes, we have a bureau in Missoula, Montana. We have a bureau in Nashville, Tennessee, because those are places where Americans live, and those are places where there are very good stories. We have folks in Dallas, and some of the normal places, but we are really paying attention, Seattle, and we're out west because we want to tell America's story from where the people are, and not simply on either coast. So that's why we have the bureaus that we have.
And these are multimedia journalists in most of these?
It varies, but most of the time, yes.
And you mentioned earlier the content relationship with the Scripps local station still. So how extensive is that? And then how does that work? How do they bring stories to your attention, or are you communicating with each of the stations, news directors daily for that content?
We have a group that's led by one of our really, really dynamic employees, Katie Link, and it's Katie's responsibility to work with the local stations, and she's done a fantastic job. So we have a process in place where we know what they have. They talk to us, we talk to them. We share material back and forth, but it's a relationship that has been built over a number of years, even prior to my arrival here. So, and it's a really good relationship because we get strong stories, and again, that just expands our ability to tell stories from all over the country.
Will you take those stories whole cloth from the Scripps local stations, or will you recut them as a Newsy story?
We don't recut them as a Newsy story because we feel like the journalism is solid, and we will tell those stories as they are. Oftentimes what we will do is take that story and add some context to it, and maybe add a guest around it, do some more research around it to even expand on it even more. But the folks who do that work are doing very good work, and we're taking stories that have a broader look at some of the issues that the country is facing. Our ability to tell COVID stories from all over the country is also an asset as well. So that's how we use that material.
So you've got the ubiquity in multi-platform carriage now, OTT, over the air, web, mobile. You've got the staff up, you've got better facilities. Now, how are you going to get Americans to watch Newsy who aren't watching already?
Michael, what am I supposed to do? That's the question for every broadcaster in America. How do we get them to watch? Excuse me.
I know you guys did a big, typically in the past, right. You've had a lot of outdoor advertising.
Right. So we have a full-fledged campaign. And one of the things for us, especially for the over-the-air viewer, we have to help them find us. And the way we want them to find us is by rescanning their televisions or rescanning their antennas so they can see us. And we have an education campaign on that. You have information on our website on where to find us and how to do it. So that's the first step in making sure that the signal is in their homes and we're available. The next step is us keeping to our promise. The next step is keeping to our promise about how we're going to deliver news, how we're going to report the news, and continue to use the journalists that we have. When we start to break stories and other people start quoting us and doing those things, that's how we're going to gain the attention, along with the fantastic promotion that we'll get from our promotional partners. And that promotion campaign is ongoing right now.
So for you, not to use the dreadful industry term KPI, but what's going to, which of course I just did, what's going to constitute success now for Newsy?
Michael, I think, somebody on the staff asked me that question, and there are levels of success for us. The obvious success is growth in the number of people who are watching us. But the next level of success for us is internal success, that we are able to tell the kind of stories that we would want to tell. We're able to stay true to this commitment that we have. And a year from now, when we are still doing what we're doing now and doing it even better, that's a measure of success. And I believe that with the great product that we produce, that we give our promotional team something great to promote, and that will lead us to increased viewership. Obviously, the increased viewership is from a business perspective a good thing, but from an informational perspective is a good thing too. If America realizes that there is a 24-hour news channel out here that's really simply working hard just to do the news and just do it straight, I think that's an attraction for a lot of viewers.
Mm-hmm. And so, Eric, lastly, you were at the Fox O&Os and you spent a number of years at CNN International.
Correct.
Now you're leading this new enterprise, building essentially not from the ground up, but rebuilding right. Something of quite some scale in a period of time that's unprecedented for news in terms of trust issues and all sorts of challenges that the industry faces generally. What does it feel like for you to be at the helm of this right now at this moment?
Michael, I am exhilarated. This is exactly what the news industry needs. This is what I've wanted to do my entire career. These are the kinds of stories I want to tell. This is the kind of approach I want to have to the journalism. Have a newsroom where we are constantly evolving and constantly growing as journalists and growing as people. It is a respectful environment where we just do good work and we go home every day, not just proud of the work that we've done, but proud of the place where we work. We have a really serious commitment here to doing great journalism, but we also have a serious commitment to treating those great journalists with a high level of respect and creating an environment that they can do great work. So I am exhilarated. This is just where I want to be.
Excellent. Well, Eric Ludgood, head of Newsy, which has relaunched this week. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
A new episode of Talking TV is available most Fridays on TVNewsCheck.com. You can also listen and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify.